officials of the Investigation and Enforcement Unit of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, at a supermarket in Area 11 Garki of the nation's capital. Is in front of the team swings into action, checking the prices of pastries on the shelves as they noticed varied prices on some items.
That was what was the issue the other time. People were picking prices and the tills were not telling the appropriate one with the display. 18 and 15. One has 15, one doesn't. There's no price, 18. You wrote 15,000.
The team moves to the higher floor to check for prices on machinery items. A directive is given for the staff to leave and the facility is sealed. The leadership of the agency puts out a warning to businesses contributing to price gauging in the food chain sector to stop.
The product brands are different and they come with different prices. But what the consumer sees is one price. And it's at the discretion of the tillman to identify which price of the product, because all the products in the till systems are linked kuli. So if he decides it's 700 kuli or 1,200 kuli, it's at his discretion and the display will show you kuli. So each brand item is supposed to be priced differently if it is different. And where you have a bunch, it's either you price individually or you display the price on the group of identical items. You cannot mix items together and have a single price, and only when you get to the till, you get a different price.
What we have found out that these people are doing is misleading pricing and lack of transparency in their pricing, which is against Section 1153. Of the law that says an undertaking shall not require a consumer to pay a price for any good or service higher than the one that is on display. So that's exactly what is happening here, and that's what we have proved to you. You have also seen it from your own perspectives.
The acting executive vice chairman of the FCCPC calls on consumers to stay watchful and report infractions.
They can lodge their complaints with us, and we give our assurances, since everybody knows by now that we don't only bark, we bite. We have the will, we have the capacity. So therefore, lodge your complaint, we'll make sure that we do you justice.
The agency has promised to provide speedy redress to consumer complaints and end the unscrupulous exploitation of Nigerian citizens.
Food is a necessity for humanity. However, this basic need is becoming difficult to afford for many Nigerians following the rising cost of foodstuff, including vegetables, staples such as garri, rice, and yam. It is a regular market day at the farmers' market in Abuja, where the farmers bring their wares and consumers hope to buy at lower rates. However, many buyers here are met with disappointment at the cost of the food items.
You can imagine a mudu of rice, 2,000 naira, and there is no money to buy it. Garri, 700. So it's not funny. There is no money. People are dying.
Oga, what is happening now is unbearable to the masses because it's not what we expected. Last 2 weeks, I believe that the price of plantain last 2 weeks is more better than today. The way things are going now, I don't know where the masses will still bear it in this extent.
For some other buyers, it's mixed feelings of anger and frustration.
People are suffering like never before. Bag of rice is 70,000. I'm not only talking about the bag of rice. Anything you buy in the market now is as like triple as downstreet. People are suffering, let's be real.
No food, no work, nothing. Government just down, they look us, we they suffer. Now if you go steal now, they will come arrest you, say you be thief. What in the one may we do for this country? What the no one help us? What in the one more we do? More we kill ourselves, ne?
The situation is the same at the popular AK Oyinbo markets and AK Oka markets in Anambra states. The prices of food and beverages have skyrocketed, causing some form of hardship for buyers and sellers.
Like last year, we do say sugar at the rate of sugar was at the rate of 40,000 just last year. But now it's 75,000. Rice is at the rate of 30,000, 32. But rice now is 65,000, 66,000.
Lactogen was 22,500 naira, but currently now it's 52,000 naira. Now it's 64,000. So the price increase is unbearable, it's too much.
Between February of 2023 and now, the cost of some food items have more than doubled. A bag of rice that sold between 30,000 and 35,000 now sells for 65,000 naira or more, depending on your location. The same goes for some items such as gari, corn, millet, flour, and palm oil. The rising cost of foodstuff has led to protests across some states, such as Kano and Niger states. The high cost followed the removal of fuel subsidy and the high rate of the foreign exchange. Analysts point to the implementation of the economic policy under the present administration.
It is not about setting up a committee. It is about rejigging the entire economic policy framework and the way we are implementing some of these policies. Even if you open up your reserves, how hungry Nigerians are today, in the next 1 month, that reserves will be empty.
However, the federal government continues to defend some of its policies towards addressing the high cost of living.
When you look at inflation, a large element is food inflation. In fact, food inflation accounts for 33% of the consumer price index. The bold measures that were taken are resonating around the world. We go to the IMF meetings, UNGA meetings, G20 meetings, and there is nothing but pride and admiration and deep respect for the courage that has been shown economically in Nigeria.
The United Nations Sustainable Goal 2 targets ending hunger and ensuring access to nutritious food by the year 2030. The present situation, however, does not suggest that that is possible. Nigerians are hoping that the impact of the policies pays the nation in the long run.
You've seen two reports at least. One of them was talking about price gouging by Nigerians. Another one is really talking about the realities that a good number of people are encountering in the country, in various parts of the nation as at this moment. No, needless to say that the economic situation in the country is increasingly unbearable. Needless to say, it is the reality for many individuals and organizations. The private sector is no less affected by that as well. The policy of the federal government to implement the fuel subsidy removal since May 29 saw the instant increase by fuel attendants, petrol stations, of the price of fuel immediately that announcement was made on May 29, 2023. Now, of course, that has also triggered a surge in food inflation. You heard from the coordinating minister of the economy, and a hike in costs of transportation, goods and services, resulting in a higher cost of living. This development, of course, has precipitated protests in many parts of the country. Now, that's for the general, way of our lives. To that court judgment, the Federal High Court in Lagos ordered the federal government of Nigeria to fix prices of goods and petroleum products within 7 days. And of course, it's not something you are unaware of. It was the Justice Ambrose Louis Alagua specifically ordered the federal government to fix prices of milk, flour, salt, sugar, bicycles and their spare parts, matches, motorcycles and their spare parts, motor vehicles and their spare parts, as well as petroleum products, diesel, kerosene, and PMS, also known as petrol. Let's have conversations around this this morning. with 3 gentlemen joining us from our studios in Abuja. Chukwemeka Eze is lecturer at Prime University in Abuja. He's a member of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. He also with him is Abubakar Umar, who is a financial analyst and economic expert, as well as Kaudi Okwefa, who is the executive director of the Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Now, Mr. Okwefa, let me begin with you.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Okwefa, I would like to begin with you, Dr. Okwefa. I'd like to begin with you. A huge chunk of the prices of goods and services, particularly farm products in Nigeria, is as a result of the price of moving those products from the farm to the city center where people will purchase them to take them to the table. How significant is that in the scheme of things, given all the things that you know and what we should be considering?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me. Let me first appreciate the effort of channels for bringing this matter up. Now, the cost of goods, the cost of services is impacted by the supply chain and logistics mechanisms. And in any interruption along the supply chain and the logistics mechanism may affect, and in most cases will affect prices. Now, in the case of what we are going through, you will recall during COVID, the supply chain mechanism was completely disrupted. And after COVID, the prices of goods went up because of the accessibility to job, accessibility to the farm, and the capacity to move the products from the point of production or the farm to the people. In the case of what we are discussing today, as long as the cost of transportation increases, you will expect that it will impact the cost of goods. Those are some of the things that are referred to as the market forces. In our own case now, I will speak to the moment you change the cost of energy, which propels mobility in most instances, you will expect that to also trickle down to the cost of production, which also includes the cost of transportation of the goods. So it is not surprising, and government is not unaware, in my own estimation, due to my interaction. As soon as the statement was made on May 29th, that fuel subsidy is gone, government knew prior to that there will be increases in the cost of transportation. And you see a lot of interventions from state level, local government level, and the federal government level. And people complain that why did the price go up immediately? If the price had not increased within the next 24 hours, what you will see is market disruption. Nothing will set in. People will keep their goods because they will be talking of recovery costs. Now, as for transportation, what you have is we are using diesel. Diesel is deregulated long time ago. Some of us are using PMS to move the smaller vehicles. So whichever way you go, price of goods. But by July 31st, no, July 13th, the government came up and declared emergency on food security. That tells that the government is aware these things will be impacted. And so many measures, grains were released, farmers were done, state governments were...
But Dr. Okwefa, the issue, my apologies if you can hear me, well, I think it is understandable. Everyone will say, okay, the natural thing would be that, the prices of goods and services will rise because of the announcement that the president made. But let me come to Mr. Umar. The value chain, let's look at the entire food value chain in the country. We'll come to the pricing, which is the main issue that we're supposed to be looking at. But talk to us about the food value chain. Do you think we have a holistic understanding as a people, Mr. Umar, of the entire food value chain? Have we significantly factored them all in, right? So that everyone in the food value chain, the agricultural, value chain, the farmers and all. Do you think we have a holistic understanding and collaboration that could have helped us to ensure not just the availability, but also affect the prices of foods, of goods and services in the country? Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Umar, we can't hear you at this moment. Okay, go ahead, please. Go ahead, we can hear you now. Oh, dear. Well, we'll come back to you, Mr. Umar. I'm sorry we cannot hear you very well right now. We can't hear you, but I'm very sure that we'll get back to you shortly. Mr. Eze, if you can take on the same question, a general understanding of cohesion of the food value chain in the country, if you get the drift of what I'm saying. Do you think we have a holistic understanding of it in a way that will have affected the food prices more favorably than we are having it now? Mr. Eze, go ahead, please.
I thought the question was directed to...
Yeah, I directed it to him, but we can't hear him. If you can just go ahead and take it on.
All right. Thank you so much. Concerning the food value chain, we ask ourselves, where are we coming from? We've been running our affairs in the country with having all the parts of the whole operating optimally. So what has disrupted it? We have in the food value chain the agriculturists, those in the livestock business. Something disrupted it. Insecurity, cost of power and energy, and also we have policies in an import-dominated economy. Certainly the interest rate, bank interest rate, the exchange rate, all this cobbled together have affected whatever disruption we are having in the value chain. So basically the issue is not whether we have a food value chain, but looking at the disruptions that have caused the value chain not to be in its optimal state. So this daily change in exchange rate definitely has totally disorganized the system.
Well, help us understand. Just 1 second, Mr. Eze. You know, there are many Nigerians who are wondering what the exchange rate has got to do with the price of tomato in Kutuwenji.
It has a lot to do with the price of tomato. And I'm going to give you an example. If you sell, if somebody running a school changes the cost of school fees from 150,000 naira in a term to 350,000 naira in a term, the tomato seller has a child in that school. He discovers that if he continues to sell a portion of tomato at perhaps, let's say 200 naira, that he won't be able to pay the new school fees of 350,000 naira. Definitely what he's going to do is to move the price from 200 naira per portion to 400 naira or more to enable him get sufficient funds to pay the school fee of his child. So he also will need to buy fuel to power his generator. If he doesn't have a generator, he wants to buy one. The costs of all this have changed. So he too will need to change his price in order to meet them at the point of their operation. The economy operates as a whole. So definitely what happens to one happens to the other. We call it a chain. And once something is removed from a chain, it affects every other thing in that chain.
But how does this not? Yeah, Mr. Eze, I get you, but how does this not? Okay, let me bring that to Dr. Okwefa. Well, Mr. Omar, I'm still going to come back to you, but let me bring that to Dr. Okwefa. Do you agree with Mr. Eze on this particular issue? Because those who will be wondering, how is this not exploitation? Dr. Okwefa, that's for you.
Yeah, I cannot but agree with him that once you can have disruption on from the point of natural disaster, you can have from the point of security, you can have from the point of energy cost, whichever way. We are all in the system, and there are interaction among all these forces, and one way or the other, everybody is affected. But however, that does not take away the fact that extortion could also set in. People could also take advantage, and that is where government management of the situation becomes critical and interventions. So what he's saying is that I may not be involved directly with one aspect of the economy, but if by default I have to interact in my daily life with somewhere that is affected, that person will transfer that effect onto me. So the same way it goes. That's why they say market force is not market force. Some people say market dynamics. Some people say market whatever. So what is at play is the many effects are there. It may not be direct, it could be indirect.
The consequences, yeah, Dr. Okwefa, my apologies. Yeah, I get the point, but the consequences might be dire. Let me ask Mr. Umar, and I believe that we can hear you now. Now, as a result of this dynamic movement of prices, more on the upwards, swing, the people are not finding it funny. It is not pleasant for many, many people, both the producers of food and the people who consume the food. So how do we protect the people from these likely extortions that Dr. Okwefa has spoken to now? How do we communicate it to them?
Yeah, good morning. I believe you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, that's good. I was talking in the morning. I said you said we should drink a lot of water, and I said the price of water has also moved up. So this is a very serious issue. When we are talking about the dire consequences of the increase in such prices, it's a very difficult thing to curtail because we are now talking about a desperate situation. And to link it up with you are trying to understand why the price of exchange rate will affect the dollar is technically a matter of inflation. Because when you have inflation, it means everybody now is trying to survive. Everybody is trying to get the real income he is going to earn. So definitely, even if the cost of your good does not relate with the raw material, you will need other costs to survive. And that makes the other people of product to, adjust their prices. I think yesterday in Abuja, I had the price of cement is around 8,000, 9,000. Some people are saying it is increasing by the hour. Although this might not be with organic demand, it might purely be, speculative, and the way people are insecure about the situation. It's about the afraid of unknown, what might happen tomorrow. You can sit here today and then tomorrow you just wake up and have that the fuel price has pushed up to 800. So that's why people do not want to take any chances to make any losses. And that's the reason why if a bit rumors come about on the price of something, you heard that the marketers will just increase price, despite the fact that what they have in the store is an all inventory. So the issue is that nobody wants to make a loss, because technically, if you make a loss, then you are not going back to the market to refill. But then other people are talking about that's not ethical or that's not moral, because you get a goods in your oil price, and then why are you trying to push the increase to the final consumer? So government has to come in. Government has to set up something. But then we can see what is happening in the past 2 days is actually sending the country into a more chaotic position than, trying to, calm everything, because everybody now is afraid. All business people are now afraid. If really government can go to Kano, open my inventory, be it either they are hoarding or otherwise, and then increase prices. We had the energy industry also, they are being sanctioned for overbilling. And when you look at in Abuja too, some stores, information is going around that, and they have been closed down because of pricing. So these are some issues. When you are in a panic mode, the best thing I think you need to do to the Nigerian people is that to get their trust first. And when you don't have their trust, then whatever policy you bring, they will not believe it, and they may not act in accordance to what the result you intend to achieve. So without that trust, it's going to be a very difficult thing to calm people in the needed perspective, and to be able to achieve the result that you want to achieve. Because it's happening, I can tell you, it's the same thing with the exchange rate. Most of the, we are seeing it 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. It's about speculation. People are actually afraid, and there is no trust in the government. We know, yes, there is a structural problem of liquidity, but then after that, there is also speculation. Everybody is trying to, how to
Mr. Omar,
off from the system.
That's a valid point that you have made there. But these speculations, these price instability, if I can use that term, is all people. And there are those who will point to the fact that, look, if we care about ourselves enough, we will not even be talking in that regard. You will not be hiking prices indiscriminately. You heard, on the one hand, there is the natural market forces. On the other hand, as Dr. Kwefa clarified, there is also the function of extortion. The example is that which we played earlier before this program started, when the FCCPC paid a visit to a shop in Abuja and they found some, unscrupulous activities going on there. How do we stem that tide? Because that is not government. Yes, it may also be as a result of what Mr. Eze said about some people saying, okay, well, I need to increase the prices also so that I can, be able to take care of my own family and all of that. But that is extortion. The person you are extorting from themselves, they also have families they want to take care of. How do we protect people? How do we protect Nigerians from Nigerians?
That's a very interesting question that you have raised, and I also have that opinion that Nigerians need to also try to be their brothers' keepers. Of course, the government, is the number one point of concern everybody is looking up to. But then it is a honesty, or I say, it's a problem within us. It's a problem within us that everybody wants to actually, cheat down on his partner, to profit off the other person. But it's actually very difficult thing for people to try to just adjust like that. It cannot happen. That's why we said you need people trust as a government. When you are a leader, you lead people. And when you lead people, you have to do some actions that they will be inspired by. And when they're inspired by, then you realize that you can begin to, adjust. Everybody will begin to say, okay, even the government is doing that. People will feel happy if such is happening. And then if people really see bad thing that is happening, like the example you give when FCCPC visited Abuja store, they might easily, I'm sure there are other stores in Abuja that might probably be doing what the other store that has been locked up is doing. But then when people see that the government is coming up to responsibility, the citizens will also play their own role in, submitting the names or reporting those that are doing such kind of malpractices. So optics is actually good, not a case of where you have people that are suffering and then people will be seeing the government is doing some kind of things that does not, actually, the government does not play the sympathetic role and trying to assist the masses in trying to recover from what is actually happening. So if the government has played an optics, show concern, show sympathy and act in good faith, I believe that people will also come up. But then it's just a matter of everybody will just assume that nobody cares actually about, the government does not care about citizens, so I'm just trying, it's just me and myself, because that's actually the mentality, or that's the mindset on the street.
Unfortunately,
so this is the reason why you see...
Unfortunately, that is the situation. Mr. Eze, let me come back to you now. So this is where we find ourselves, and I'm glad that you are a member of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Now, this particular conversation that we are having stems from a lot of, how do I put this now, interesting conversations, distrust, and all of those ones. Now, talking about appropriate pricing, what factors do you think we may be missing? Beyond the regulations, such as the FCCPC, what factors in the area of appropriate pricing could we be missing that could be a safeguard for people?
Ayo, I want to start with a caveat that though I'm a member of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, I don't speak for the committee.
That is understandable.
So any opinion I give here is my personal opinion. So, yes, I have looked at what is happening, and I think we should do less treating the symptoms. The root of the matter is that Nigerians like movement. Anything that will affect their movement will affect prices. Now look at income. The minimum wage is 30,000 naira, and some states are not paying it. Then look at inflation. We are having hyperinflation. Some call it stagflation. That's what we are having now. Look at interest rates. Cost of borrowing affects production. Look at the exchange rate. We are import dominated. In fact, when people hear most supermarkets in this country sell foreign products. Yes, the food that the masses eat, they are not foreign. But you need transport to produce them. You will need money to produce them. The factors of production, they go beyond that they are local. Those factors, some of them are dictated by what happens at the banks, what happens at the parallel market. In fact, so considering the situation we found ourselves, the market forces that are in operation, we can assuage the situation by engaging in more production. Once the production continues to be low and continues to be disrupted, because, for instance, some people are afraid even to travel to certain parts because of insecurity. In some places, for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, you don't get power. So basically, there is no way you will continue production without power. So the organized private sector should be engaged by the government. And they should suggest ways to come out of this.
Okay.
If you want to change prices without the organized private sector playing a role, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, we find it difficult to do its work because you may end up having a black market for almost every product.
Okay. Well,
so when you have a black market,
yes,
for these products,
yes,
definitely things will go out of hand.
Okay. Well, let me come back to.
I think.
Yes. Go ahead. Please land on that point. Land on that point.
Yes, I think since we are operating in a chain, all parties should be involved.
Okay.
Extortion that we talk about will disappear in the face of production and competition.
Okay. Well, I guess that's part of the conversation that the federal government is already having. But let me come back to you, Dr. Okwefa. From what we are saying now and all the issues that have been raised, are market forces enough to ensure appropriate pricing?
I will not go straight to say yes or no. But in the middle, I will say market forces may not be enough if it is not properly managed and controlled.
Okay.
There is this thing you call social redistribution of wealth. There is inequality. There is security issues. You have global issues. You have energy costs. Then you have wage. Now, what the government has done to make, to assuage the situation is what I think I want to emphasize. And Nigerians, like my other colleagues have said, will have to build trust and pay attention. May 29, statement was made that situation is not that good. July 13, a statement was made, food security emergency declared. July 31, intervention measures were made public to Nigerians. We will intervene here, the government will do this, the government will do that. By October 1, the president was clear. We are at the bottom of a cliff. To move out of that cliff, I need to press the throttle. And when I press the throttle, there will be some inconvenience to give me a little bit of force to jack. We are in that stage. Then the liberalization of the exchange rate. All these factors had come together. So what do we need to focus or do now to make the market forces may not be enough. The government has to do something, but definitely not price control.
Okay. Well, which is what the president himself has also already said.
No price control.
Yeah, which the president himself has already declared that he's not going in that direction. But Mr. Umar, now...
Just 4 days ago.
Yeah. Perhaps one of the challenges that a number of people are looking at Mr. Abubakar Umar is that the federal government seems to be alone in this. How about the state governments? What should they be doing? It is in the states that the people live who are complaining. It is within the confines, within the territories of the states and the necessary collaboration of the state governments, their commissioners, their local government administrations, that should be also finding a way to pacify the people so that there is no unnecessary unrest. I have, and I will continue to reference the example of the Niger state government, who has said we will prioritize our people in terms of food. What should the state governments themselves be doing right now?
Yeah, I think that is a very interesting point here, because this is also what I have in mind. I think we focus too much on the federal government, and the power given to them might be enormous. Of course, that's why people focus. But then the coming together of the subnationals is what will be able to get us out of this situation. If you look at when they have, devalued the currency, the amount of FAC that is coming into respective states, I think, is it yesterday I'm seeing analysis, a state like Adamawa has more than 60% increase in their FAC. Almost the state have witnessed a significant rise in the FAC allocation. But, I understand that, of course, their overhead costs might rise. But then it's understandable when you have an increase in your income, the least you can do for people in such a dire situation is to adjust their salary. But it's unfortunately that some states are still paying 18,000 naira minimum wage, not to talk of even the existing 30,000. So these are some areas. When we look at it and then is it December or November, I think the federal government in conjunction with the State Economic Council, they have actually, I think, released about 5 billion or so to states, where some they can use to distribute palliative measures to their respective citizens. But then how effective is that? How has the state implemented that? And also, the third one I will say is us, the citizens. The responsibility to look at our states and then begin to also caution them or ask for accountability.
Okay.
Thank God, I will say we are getting there little by little, although it requires a much pressure than what we have been doing. Because now the budget of various states are actually available on the internet. A lot of states, we can see what other state governors are actually spending in their budgets when we compare with the actual. So I believe that, and with that, citizens need to also look at, a lot of pressure to put a lot of demand on their state government.
Okay.
The challenge we have here is that the people asking for accountability, are scattered across the country. So to have them in congruence, they are only going to, put pressure on the federal government. So if maybe 5 people come together, you realize that they are not much, that they are going to call on...
So since we are talking about...
information regarding somebody's state.
My apologies, Mr. Umar, for breaking in again. Since we are talking about redistribution of wealth, Mr. Eze, maybe we should also be talking about redistribution of responsibilities. Let the state governments themselves smell the coffee, come out to be counted, and take deliberate responsibilities. What roles are there right now for state governments? I know that, of course, as I said, Niger state government is thinking in a particular direction. I also know that Lagos state government is also collaborating with some states in terms of food production, I think rice, to be specific. What roles are there for the states to help bring down the cost of food in particular?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think states have a duty to ensure that since our people are agrarian in nature, that a lot of farming will be taking place They should establish storage facilities and provide implements, seeds, fertilizers. And it's high time they call even their own citizens to a meeting to discuss, to have a conversation on how to move forward. Because if people are dependent on listening to only radio stations, what are announced in radio stations, the times we have found ourselves, that wouldn't be enough. There is need for conversation. And people outside the government, daily management should give their opinions, and the state governors should take steps to ensure, especially now that we're approaching the rainy season. So it will be good for us to continue to do things the way we've been doing it and expect different results. Definitely it will not be so. And to expect to pay a civil servant 18,000 and want to pacify him is difficult to pacify hunger, because what happens in the stomach affects the mind. So I think all the states of the Federation, the subnationals, should take steps, especially considering their resolutions in the National Economic Council. They should go back and talk to their citizens and get opinions on how to improve the welfare of the people, because the protests we are seeing here and there, we shouldn't allow such situations to snowball to a point whereby we'll be inviting security agencies, because hungry people, it will be difficult to use security on them successfully.
Absolutely.
The best security is food security. And everything that should be done to ensure food security in the subnationals should be done right away, so that we will not get to that situation that will become unsustainable.
Okay.
And quick fixes may not be sufficient. So
yeah, but then
we do things that
perhaps the challenge here, Mr. Eze, yes, perhaps the challenge here is what are we even telling people? Mr. Okwefa, beg your pardon, Dr. Okwefa, how should we be communicating to people to build trust? Mr. Omar mentioned that earlier, and this will be the final conversation, question on this matter. How should government be communicating, not just throwing information out, communicating with people, engaging people? There is a lot of displeasure and distrust and tension in the nation right now. State governments hardly say anything, and everyone is pointing at the federal government, mentioning the president, and that's been our history down through the ages. It's always the president, never the governors, never the administrators of the states. What kind of conversation should we be having? How and who should be communicating with the people, engaging with the people to build trust, to calm nerves?
First is to say that all arms of government, both federal, state, and the local government, on the part of the federal government, the communication should continue as it's going. The National Orientation Agency should step up and do more. Then the National Economic Council, as a chief already said, they need to get more serious. It shouldn't be until the president of the country sits with them and they now start ruling out those issues. And the president was specific in his statement about 4 or 5 days ago to the governors and to the subnational leadership. They need to deliver on their mandate. So the conversation should be, the state government should start with the stakeholders engagement, not flamboyant engagement. Stakeholder engagement with farmers, traders, manufacturers, and civil society, to make them understand what is the actual situation. Knowledge is power. Then at the level of the local government, before I go to the local government, the state government should also publish what goes to the local government. Just like the federal government is publishing what goes to the state government. The state government should publish what they release to the local government, so that we know the state governments that are keeping local government resources. So if the local government have enough resources, they too will engage in stakeholder engagements and all these stuff. Then the media must use the right language. Every time you talk of security situation in Nigeria, it's always insecurity. You never hear security. See, the semantics and the polemics of what we dish out also is very critical. So we cannot say less on communication. It must be strategic, it must be targeted, and it must be specific to specific people.
Okay.
And we must also invest in our education.
Okay. Mr. Omar, same question. How do we engage the people so that we can, because thankfully you are the one that began the conversation about building trust. What do we need to do?
On the conversation of building trust, we actually need to do a lot, and we have a lot of work to do. The trust is emanating from the consistent and persistent failure of government to deliver on what they promise. I think last week I was discussing with the worker, particularly, the citizens look at the federal and state as just the same thing. The federal government promised to pay, is it 35,000 palliative or something, while some workers are complaining that such amount was not paid. So this persistent failure to deliver what you have promised or approved to do, it's what makes the situation dire. But then, if you want to curtail it, the first thing to do is we work with the National Orientation Agency. That's the first thing. Two, we try to have, a centralized information dissemination, because, the issue of fake news and politics really distort with how we consume information. And these are some of the issues that we, continuously have. When somebody was given wrong information 1, 2, 3 times, at the end of the day, he will just get fed up. Even if the accurate information comes in, he tends to have a misbelief. But which means the citizens also need to do their own homework. We need to rise up to demand for explanation and information from that government. Sometimes we have to go extra mile to do our due diligence to make sure that what is happening is actually right. And then to give ourselves the chance also to ask for more to be done from the government. I can tell you that, if you remove the social media and the, traditional media that we have, a lot of people, a lot of citizens scattered across remote areas are not very much aware of a lot of dynamics happening. And this constitutes a lot of gap in, trying to get the trust of the people. They are only, at that time, when election comes, they will just tell them whatever they want to tell them and sell a narrative. And that's what they believe, because a lot of people in the remote area do not have luxury of accessing information online or to how to know how to verify information.
Which is
we need to do a lot.
Yes.
That's where education comes into play.
Absolutely, which is actually quite disturbing, because if they don't have the information, they are left to fill in the gaps by themselves. Now, Mr. Eze, perhaps that's the question that I want to ask you. How do we block the communication leakages? Because unless people have the authentic information, and as we say, nature abhors vacuum, they will fill it with anything. How do we ensure that people get the right interpretation of the information available to them?
All right, thank you. When it gets to personal information, you ask, there is a question I used to ask myself. How do politicians get the network with which they campaign to people? When it comes to campaigns, politicians go to remote villages, they pass on information to them, they paste posters, they get in contact with the traditional rulers, the religious leaders. So I think now it has come to governance. Let us replicate the way we operated during the campaigns. Let's deal with the traditional rulers, with the religious leaders. These people sit with the masses on a daily basis. So by the time we deal with those outside the tiers of local government, state government, federal government, by the time we communicate with them, definitely the message we pass will trickle down. So I think we know how to communicate if we really want to communicate. But in many states, if you check the radio stations, they sing the praises of those in power 98%. So if they really want to communicate to the people, they have to do a mix. You reduce the time you spend in praising people, because even in many states, people are tired of listening to radio stations. So we need to change the information dynamics and perhaps try something new, the way we used during the campaigns. to communicate to all strata of the people. So I think people are, and when people are hungry, they don't care about the information you give. They just want to eat. So those things, look at Arab countries. Many of them are still practicing monarchies. They are not practicing democracy. But many people in their countries are comfortable. When people are comfortable, even the fake news, they will challenge you. If you give them fake news, they will challenge you. So when we make the economy to be vibrant, and people can eat, and people can train their children comfortably, especially we need to make education substantially free. If we want to communicate, when people are more educated, communication becomes easier. But if people are not educated, it will be difficult for them to receive the right signals by way of communication. So education is part of the communication process.
Absolutely.
Reaching the people through the traditional media and otherwise still constitutes part of the communication.
I have to thank you, gentlemen, this morning, because the kind of communication we've had, the kind of understanding that people have now, I hope, will help to at least set some things in place to let everyone know that this is not because of one individual or the other. It's a collective thing, and every one of us has to be a part of it. Chukwuemeka Eze, lecturer, Prime University, Abuja, and member, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Thank you for joining us, along with Abubakar Umar, financial analyst and economic expert, as well as Dr. Kayode Okpefa, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation this morning.
Thank you.
So, we flip to the next conversation that I told us about the other time. What are the roles of local governments? In the meantime, get a sip of water.